Okay, we also have an update on the retiring endorsements. There's been a little bit of back and forth because our website still says that they expire in 2023. That has been extended to 2025, and candidates will have until 2025, June 30th, 2025 to complete those requirements. There will be no exceptions or extensions after June 30th, 2025. So if you've got somebody working on an old endorsement form, I would just check in with them periodically and make sure they're really going to be done by June 30th, 2025, because if they're not, they're going to have to start all over on the new endorsement form. Travis says, so at this point, should we only be using the new requirements to create POPs? That would be my suggestion. Yes, strongly suggest. Unless you've got somebody you think can be done in a few months, but on the old form. But most people are going to take more than 2 years to complete the endorsement forms.
Lisa, could I add something?
Sure.
I was just in conversation with Sarah Webke about this very thing. And a lot of some of the retiring documents, some of the coursework isn't going to even be offered after this year. So if you have candidates who are planning on doing that, they're going to run into issues because they're not even going to be able to take the classes that are on those retiring forms. So just FYI for you, for your teachers.
Thanks for that, Jen. Any other questions on the retiring endorsements? Okay. Then this brings us to our next question. We had some questions about what endorsements can Apple programs recommend for and which ones can they not recommend for. And Apple programs can recommend for the ESL endorsement, the library media endorsement, CTE general or composite endorsement. Some of you may have noticed that those CTE general endorsements that have not been on the webpage are now on the webpage. They're called the composite endorsements. So if you want to have somebody who's looking at getting that, you can look at those requirements. The secondary literacy interventionist endorsement, which is the one that is essentially replacing the reading endorsement. That's the one you can recommend for. And then any of the elementary fine arts specialist endorsements, dance, drama, music, visual art. Yeah, it is. The ones that Apple programs cannot recommend for are driver's ed, education technology, instructional coaching, teacher mentoring, gifted and talented, literacy specialist K through 12, elementary math or elementary science or elementary STEM, and the individualized lifetime activities endorsement. And these all endorsements are considered value added, meaning that they're intended to be earned after somebody has already had a professional license. And because Apple is an initial licensure program, they're not available through Apple. Any questions on that? Okay, that one was easy. All right, moving on. So we'll have one more meeting after today for this school year. We are not going to meet in June or July. And so next school year, I haven't had any feedback about this particular time being an issue for anybody, but I would like to try out this polls feature on Zoom, and I thought this might be a good chance. So I'm going to launch this poll. Our proposed schedule for next year is going to basically keep the same schedule that we've done this year, where we're going to meet on the 4th Thursday of the month, except for in November, where the 4th Thursday is Thanksgiving. So we're going to meet the 3rd Thursday from 9 to 10 a.m. So do you foresee an issue with the proposed schedule for next year? Ooh, we're up to 33 or up to 84% participation. That's awesome. 87, there we go. I've never done this before, so this is kind of fun. One thing that it did not let me do is if you said, yes, you see an issue, was to explain your concern. So if you do foresee an issue, you might have to just send me an email because it wouldn't let me do that on the poll. Or if you want to drop it in the chat, that would be fine too. But it looks like most people do not foresee an issue with the schedule. So we'll probably keep it unless there's a big concern that one of those 8% people brought up. Cool, thanks. Thanks for being my guinea pigs. I've never done that before, so that was fun. I'm reading the, oh, okay. We're more talk about CTE. That's great. All right, so some of you have probably heard, we did share the Utah Educator Preparation Program standards in this meeting a couple months ago. And so I'm assuming most of you are familiar with these, but in case you missed the email, they have been released for public comment through May 14th, 2023. We've had some feedback that we've received so far. There were like 40 responses, but only about half of them actually had some feedback in them. So I think, we do have a bit more time before we get that feedback, but I do want to give you guys an opportunity to provide that feedback if you haven't already. We have the feedback form, which is in Qualtrics, where you can share your thoughts on the standards. And then if you want to just look at the standards, there's a link to that document there. These standards are still in draft form, so they will probably change based upon public comment and then board feedback as we present to the board. We've never had educator prep standards before in Utah, so this is going to be a new adventure for everybody. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback we get and what the board thinks about it. Any question on this? Travis says, to anyone who hasn't read through them, they're easier to read through than the teacher standards. I think so too. We should try and keep them simple since this is the first time we've ever had standards and we wanted to make them simple, but that could be an advantage or a disadvantage, I guess, depending on how you look at it. So I know one of the comments that we got back was, how are these going to be implemented? And if what we're anticipating is that the standards will go to committee in June, which means they won't go to full board until August. So what we're anticipating is that this next school year is basically going to be an educational year where we meet with programs and discuss where they're at on the standards, what evidence they may have that shows that they've met the standards. And then we won't officially start implementing them until the following school year when we start doing program reviews. So we'll have a year to kind of think about that and what that looks like before we start using them in reviews. Okay, I don't see any other comments in the chat or hands raised, so I think we'll move on. All right, recap of the APPEL Leadership Conference. I think I'm going to turn the time over to Camilla on this one. She's going to share some of the feedback that we got from day one.
We appreciated everyone attending and we got some good feedback from you guys. We appreciate that as well. Most people said that it was pretty good. We had a little over a quarter people say that it was excellent and less than that say that it was okay. We're glad we didn't have any one-star reviews, which is always a good sign. We are aware that it needs some work and we appreciate your feedback and we hope to do better for the next time. Can we go to the next one? Thank you. All right, and then just some of the overall feedback. You guys enjoyed being able to collaborate with each other, seeing what everyone else is doing, learning new ideas and seeing what there's to support other teachers. And we got some really good suggestions, including having larger space, more variety in some of the topics, and having more sessions geared toward instructional coaches. It would be nice if we could provide lunch, snacks, and drinks, and we'll see about what we can do. And we might look into offering some online options as well. So we're grateful for your feedback and we look forward to seeing you at the next one and we'll do what we can to make it better. So
I think on Monday I sent out a survey just asking about what date or time of year works best for the next conference. So thanks to everybody who's had an opportunity to fill that out. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat a link. So if you haven't filled out the survey regarding next year's conference, you want to click on that link and just it should only take about 30 seconds to fill out. At least I don't know if you can pull up the results from the people that have already submitted that. But so far, it looks like the most popular time of year, the top preference is going to be sometime in the fall, possibly October, September. The general consensus we got was that people want to stay away from the UPARA conference and a couple other things that are going on in March. So we will definitely try to see, we'll see what results we get today as well and see if this changes at all. But we'll definitely start to look at specific dates and booking a venue. I know that we are going to look to see if we can book it at the Jordan School District Auxiliary Building. So right now, tentatively, we'd like to have it in Jordan School District, so it still remain in the Salt Lake Valley. And as far as specific dates go, we don't know those yet. But yeah, like I said, it looks like September. October is going to be the top preference, and as far as days of the week, that was pretty evenly spread out between whether it should be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Thursday, Friday. So, but we do appreciate that feedback. So thanks to everyone that's taking the time to fill that out, and we'll see if any of this changes or if it remains pretty consistent with the results we've received so far.
We would like to try and get those dates scheduled this afternoon. So that's, if you haven't filled out the survey, please do so by noon so that we can start working on that today. Okay, we are going to go to an update on the teacher preparation competency workshop. Jennifer, would you mind sharing that information? Let's see, I'm going to try and go back to start the slideshow. There we go.
So for those of you who attended the second day of the training at the APPEL conference, we were really grateful for those that were there that gave us some good feedback on the teacher preparation competencies that we are just barely beginning to get started on. We had some good discussion about the rigor that those need to have to help our teachers we want them to be relevant to our incoming teachers and those in the pre-prep program. And so we were grateful for kind of some of that discussion that we had about making them realistic to what teachers in those settings could do. We are looking to create a committee to help with the further development of the competencies as far as their further development. And so that will be coming as far as the development piece, and then of course getting feedback on where that goes from there, and then making some revisions along for that. And so that's kind of what's coming up in the future.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments about that? Hey. I think we're good. I don't see any hands raised, so. All right, well, we're looking forward to that. And we really wanted to thank you guys for those that participated in the conference and for part of your team that came, excuse me. We did get some really great feedback, and as we're looking through, particularly with the rubrics that were developed, it's been great to have that discussion of what do we expect teachers to really know and be able to do by the time they finish our programs. And I think that's key. key question that we're trying to answer. So it's been great to see that process. Lauren asked, are you seeking volunteers for the committee? How do we express our interest in that? I think at this point, if you wanted to just email Jennifer and say that you're interested, or you have somebody that's interested, and then they can take that into account when they are looking at forming that committee. We'd like to get a wide representation from lots of different programs from both universities and APPEL programs. So yes, if you're interested, please let us know. Okay, we're going to turn the time over to Lori now to talk about the foundations of reading and the literacy preparation competencies.
All right, Ren. So just a reminder, if you have candidates who have that PLP established before September 1st, 2022, this doesn't apply to them. So this is anyone on or after September 1st of last year. They will need to take the Foundations of Reading test. Right now, we are just accepting any score. So in the spring of 24, that's when a cut score will be established. And then in the fall, that's when they'll have to pass that cut score to be able to be licensed or be recommended for licensure. So we have here the link is a letter that we've created just so you can send out to all your candidates. It should answer any questions that they have. We're hoping that will help alleviate or lighten your load to answer those questions beforehand. So you're welcome to use that letter with anyone that needs it. Any questions on that?
This link is not live. We'll get this, I assume, right?
Yeah, I can drop it in the chat if we need to. Do you have it, Lisa?
Thank you.
Yep, so that's required for elementary, early child, elementary SPED and early childhood. Has there been any new recommendations on supporting candidates for this assessment other than the letters training? I do have some links in here. There's some study guides and a couple of resources that I have on a slide. So we'll share that with you in just a moment.
Lori,
Yeah.
this is for SPED candidates as well, correct?
Right. So if you have a candidate who has early child license but is now seeking elementary, yes, they do need to take the assessment. All right. So the vouchers, that's our next topic. So Lisa, are you okay working on that link while I chat? Okay, great, thanks. So will the APPEL program be responsible for the students who failed the test or the college that they took ELA methods? So being responsible, I would say, is the responsibility of paying for the test falls on the candidate. So I would say the college probably where they took the ELA methods will be responsible for helping them to study for it. Leah, does that sound correct? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, they'll be responsible to help them to study and get better prepared, but the candidate will be the one that's responsible for paying for the additional tests. So the voucher that we give will cover the test one time, but we can only award one voucher. So the candidate needs to know, like, after this date, if you don't pass, it's going to be your responsibility, and that's in the letter. So if you want to share that letter with them, that would be super helpful. So for the vouchers, I would love for you to fill out this voucher. It needs to come from the APPEL director, not the candidate. So please do not share this link with your candidates. If it doesn't come from you, I don't know if if they're approved or all of those things. So it needs to come from you. And if you would please just, you can kind of look in the future and say, okay, these are the people that will need it in the next 4 months, and then just fill in the voucher that one time. I mean, of course, you can always add more if people pop up, but if you can kind of, if you only have to do it every 3 months, it's not as big a deal, right? So yes, will program be responsible? Send the vouchers to see us so we can know it has been sent. Yes, I can do that with you guys. I don't typically do it with universities, but I can. If you have a bunch of people, what I've done is I've just shared my Excel document with the person, but I'm happy to CC you. That's fine. Yep, I can do that. All right. Thanks, Lisa. Is everyone able to get into that document now?
It keeps asking me for a code.
Huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
same with me. I need like a USB login for SharePoint.
Let me just upload a copy of it. Let's see if I can do that.
Hey, Lori, why don't I do that? I'll upload a copy to the meeting, the collaboration folder.
Okay,
And
okay.
then,
I've got it in the chat.
Okay.
So
Cool.
hopefully that works. All right. So the next thing we need to discuss,
Yeah, sorry, just one second.
it's okay. I can pull it up on my computer if that's easier. You're juggling all the things behind the
Okay,
scenes.
there we go.
Thank you.
Next slide.
Yep, we're good with that. So yep, there's the voucher, the link for the vouchers. So here's just a review of the timeline. So from September of last year until August of 2024, everyone that's seeking licensure has to take the test. Again, there's no passing score required, but we're using this data to really look at where the cut score should be. And so just really encourage your candidates to do their best, to study, to know the information. Like, we want our kids to have teachers who know how to teach reading, right? So the best we can do to encourage them is to take it seriously, right? So in spring of 24, that cut score will be established. In the fall of 24, that's when they will have to pass that test, or they will have to show an equivalent understanding through a micro-credential. And then moving forward, of course, the universities will be required to help prep for their students. So any questions on that timeline? We're good. Okay, so the top link here, this is how they get registered for the test. I send that out to them in the email that I send to them with their voucher. They can register their voucher anytime, but it will expire in August of this year. So if they don't use it before August, we would need to get them a new one in August. But once they register, it's good for a year. So if they're planning on taking it, if you get it, just let them know they are good up through August. We do recommend, highly recommend that they take the test in person. There has been a lot of issues with the remote proctoring. Even if they test the day before, if someone else is on the internet, it could mess up their proctoring environment. So we've just had, it's just so much easier if they can do it in person. So just something to encourage your candidates. And just a reminder, they will only be issued one voucher. So if there's a problem, we had, sadly, this one person didn't have a current ID, and I can't reissue another voucher because they weren't prepared. So there's a lot of steps they need to do to be prepared. They need to make sure to take this seriously and be ready. Yeah, I can only do one voucher. And then the frequently asked questions that's there, I can upload that in the link as well if we need to. Yeah, I can put the vouchers link in there as well. So the frequently asked questions, you're welcome to share with your candidates. it just helps kind of break down all the steps. So yeah, I'll share that in the chat in just 1 second. So foundations of reading the content. There are 3 parts that are multiple choice. This is a very intense experience. I went through it. It does take about 4 hours. So just FYI that it is very intense. The first 3 parts are multiple choice, but it is very much application of knowledge. It gives, here's a student, here's their data. What would you do to help the student? So it's very much not, it's not like I took the reading endorsement test and it was very much vocabulary. Do you understand? Like, do you know what this vocabulary means? This one is very focused on, here's the problem. How would you solve this problem? It's very much, do they have the knowledge to help students who have reading difficulties? So the writing part, I feel like, is as a state where we are the lowest in. So anything you can do to encourage your students to practice writing their thinking down is super helpful. Give them mock students, or if they're in the classroom, like say, write up what you did for the student that you helped. So just helping them think through that process. I think that writing is, you really have to know something deeply to be able to explain it in words. So other than a multiple choice, right, where you can, there's just different test taking skills, and writing is a very critical one. So just letting you know. Okay.
Hey, Lori.
Yes.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I assume that the micro credential would only be for candidates who have taken the foundations of reading and not passed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. They have to take it first.
Yeah.
And then once they've taken it, then they can try the micro credential pathway. Yep. Good question. Any other questions? And I don't have these finished yet, but I'm thinking if they do have letters training, that could be a micro credential. Typically, if they have letters training, they're going to pass the test. Like it is very thorough and it will help them. So I just dropped the link for the survey. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide if there aren't any other questions. All right, did you want me to do this one, Lisa, or did you want to do this one?
We're gonna do a little bit of a reflection here where so some of you are probably aware we have the early literacy educator preparation competencies. So maybe you've had a chance to look at these, maybe you haven't. This will be your opportunity. So we're going to put a link in the chat here. And if you can pull those up to take a look at those. These were approved in the board rule in 2020, and they've been traditionally covered within university programs. But now we've got our APPEL programs and our candidates going through. If your candidates are taking university courses that are covering these, then you're probably all set. But if not, or you're going to plan on creating your own coursework, or you have candidates that are coming from somewhere else, then this is kind of a good opportunity to take a look and see what those literacy competencies are. What do we expect our candidates to know and be able to do to help teach reading? And we're going to give you just a few minutes to read through that and reflect on what competencies do you think are already being addressed in your program? What competencies may be currently missing in your program? And then if you get this far, this is what we're going to collaborate on in just a few minutes, is how can you incorporate these competencies into your program? So should the methods of ELA be covering these competencies, and would additional coursework be required? I think the answer to the first one is yes, we would expect the ELA methods to be covering some of these or all of these. So the answer to that question is going to be kind of up to you, is how do you want to incorporate these competencies? Would the ELA methods be sufficient, or would additional courses be required, or maybe additional clinical experiences or something like that? So we're just going to give you maybe about 4 or 5 minutes to think individually, and then we're going to put you into breakout rooms to kind of share your thoughts. Okay, I think everybody should from their breakout rooms now. I'd like to just kind of take a minute. Some of our rooms were really small, and if you there were some great ideas shared as I was kind of looking around at different rooms, and we have a spokesperson that wants to share some of the great ideas that were talked about.
Does that echo me still? Oh, yeah.
So what were some of the things, competencies that you feel like are already being addressed in your programs, or ideas on how you can incorporate these competencies into your programs?
So Lisa, if I might share, just some confusion that my group had was that the APPEL programs are curious if the expectation is that they're going to be responsible for these competencies, where their assumption was that the pre-prep program was going to prepare their educators with these competencies. So there was just a little bit of confusion as to what the APPEL's role is as far as the competencies are concerned.
That is a great question. And ultimately, because you are the one recommending these candidates, you have ultimate responsibility to make sure they've met these competencies. Now, how you do that could differ depending on program. Whether you take it upon yourself to teach them these competencies in coursework that you create, or whether you are working with universities or having them take courses that universities have created. Either way works, and or whether you're developing other measures of competency. But essentially, you are responsible to ensure that they've met those competencies, however way works best for your program. I hope that answers that question. Are there any other questions in related to that?
Lisa, can I use an example to make sure that I understand correctly?
Mm-hmm.
So as an APPEL program, if I am facilitating to make sure that my candidates are taking the methods of ELA and literacy in the content area and completing letters training and the foundations of reading, I am showing that they've demonstrated competency in these areas.
Yes,
Okay.
that would be a great example. Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly.
And just also related, but these newly developed competencies, educator prep programs are tasked with including them as well. So if a candidate takes a course from a methods language arts course with these elements in them, or if it's 2 courses, then we can also assume that they're covered.
Yes, I think that could be a safe assumption. And that is part of what we're working with the university programs to do, is to make sure that they're also covering those competencies in their course.
One thing I think will be interesting to see though, Kelly, is whether as universities look at these standards, that they decide that maybe more than one course is necessary. Whereas right now we just say, take the ELA methods course. And so that's something that we'll all need to be aware of is it the same at every university? Just take the one course still, or do some universities require 2 courses to cover all those competencies? And so that's just something we'll need to be aware of as we move forward.
Yeah, and that was the discussion we had in our breakout, that very thing, because it seems more. And so is there going to be an additional course? But yes, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, I would just agree with that from my experience. Part of what we've done is they take their courses, and then I'll usually observe small group time and do a little interview with them about, how they're meeting students' needs. And it seems like my teachers who have just taken the ELA methods course, particularly my upper grades teachers, so 4th and 5th grade teachers, struggle when it comes to some of those more foundational skills like phonemic awareness and phonics, which we know are so important. And so I am wondering if there are gaps in some of those courses because they're addressing K-5 versus my teachers who take letters and ELA, well, letters in lieu of ELA methods seem to have a much more robust understanding, but that's 8 units over the course of 2 years. So yeah.
Lisa, what's the deadline, I guess, that the APP programs have been given as far as implementing these new competencies into their coursework?
That deadline is kind of already passed. So university candidates have, they're all required to take the Foundations of Reading test right now before they could get their license. So I know we've had some programs that have kind of reevaluated based off of their Foundations of Reading scores to try and modify their courses to help students that have been struggling with some of those areas. But they should, from what I've seen, they've all like, yes, we've evaluated this. Lori's been working with them to kind of say, okay, well, what are their strengths and weaknesses? So it's kind of been an ongoing process, but the expectation that they would have courses that align is there now, but they may be making some tweaks.
Is there a pathway if somebody wants to take and pass the Foundations of Reading? Could that excuse them from, would that demonstrate all the competencies theoretically, or do some of them need to be demonstrated in the classroom? Or do we know that yet?
So Malia can correct me if I'm wrong, but right now I believe the assumption is if they pass the Foundations of Reading test, they've demonstrated the competencies. Now that, if you look bullet by bullet, that may not be entirely accurate, but one of the measures that we're using is the Foundations of Reading test for the pre-service teachers. So if they pass that, then we can assume that they met those competencies.
Well, let's maybe look at that and get back to the field on this one, because there certainly are competencies that are not specifically measured in the Foundations of Reading assessment. And so let's have a better idea and make sure that we explain that well. And so if somebody, because currently in a university program, candidates must take the coursework and the Foundations of Reading test. Both are required. So let's make sure that we have a really solid answer before we give an answer. So we'll get back to the field on that.
I think if they are taking the letters, they're doing the bridge to practice. So that's showing their application of knowledge. So if they're doing that, or if they're doing their coursework in the university, I feel like both of those things, like in the university, they're creating a phonics lesson and administering that. They're giving a core phonics assessment and prescribing intervention to go with that. So there's application built into both of those areas. But yeah, we for sure can look at the competencies and give you like a list of, this is what Foundations of Reading assesses, and this is something that you might need to check off.
Okay. Any other questions on the Foundations of Reading or the literacy preparation competencies? Okay. All right. So just a little preview into May. Some of you are also aware that the cut score for the pedagogical performance assessment will go into effect in September. And so we're going to spend some time during our May directors meeting to talk about ways that programs have incorporated these pedagogical performance assessment standards into their courses and into their practices to help those candidates meet those competencies, and have seen success with their candidates as have passed the pedagogical performance assessment with the cut score that will be established in September. So if we haven't asked them to present, we will shortly. So that'll be, the main meeting will be heavily on presentations from other programs. So, and if you've got instructional coaches or pedagogical performance assessment directors, if they can make it to that meeting, that would be really beneficial. Okay, I think we're going to go to our APPEL director or the Q&A. I know there were a couple of questions in the chat. Let's see, there was one about Keith. This is Keith saying, confused about how to extend an LEA specific license. Per the step-by-step guide, it states that it won't happen until after July 1st. and to contact the HR department, what again is our specific role in trying to extend that for an educator in a unique situation.
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
So Keith, for LEA specific licenses or endorsements, after July 1 is when you'll put it into Cactus exactly the same way as you would an initial LEA specific license. There will be a little check mark that says this is a renewal. And then there are educator requirements to renew an LEA specific license. So those are all in there. So it really is, if you want to maintain their employment and you want to co-sign on the renewal, then there's a form that you can fill out and the educator fills out and make sure that they do student data privacy and ethics, all of the things that every other licensed educator would need to do to renew.
And then come September, if you will, we'll have to make sure that the school board approves that as well and all of that process.
So renewals do not have to go in front of the school board, only initial licenses for LEA specifics.
Okay, and that form that you're talking about that both the educator would sign as well as us, that will be where?
I just put a link in the chat to the step-by-step guide, and that includes LEA specific license renewals. And there's a form there that you can use.
Awesome, thank you so much.
It looks like there was a question about which Salt Lake Community College course will help meet the literacy competencies. And Maria Griffin is here. She says that the instructor of my ELA methods course has incorporated these competencies into the 45-hour content. So if you're using that course, then that's a great resource to help meet those competencies. And then, let's see. Double check your local policy on ELA specific. The state doesn't require it to go to our local board again, but our local board rule, whoops, I have to take them in June. Okay, so is that having them renew? Does the board have to approve all? Is that a state requirement or is that a local decision? Malia?
So it's like whatever your local policy is, the state does not require them to go in front of the school board, but your school board may say, even if we're renewing them, we want to approve it. So just make sure you follow your local policy, but we do not require a open board meeting for renewal.
Okay. And then it says, when can ALL teachers apply for renewal? They can do that at any time. They can renew now. It looks like maybe the link wasn't working 2 weeks ago, but we've double checked.
So I would again reference people to the step-by-step guide. We thought it was going to live in USIMS, but it's not. And so the renewals are living externally, but the link is in that step-by-step guide.
Yeah, and we put the link to that on our webpage. If you click on licensing and then under renew a license and then AEL associate license, Emily's got the link in the chat. It looks like Eric's got a question about a counselor AEL.
Yeah. Do you have a second?
Sure.
Okay. So first of all, can counselors get associate licenses? I guess that's my first question.
Yes.
Okay. And then second, so we're looking at hiring a counselor in our district, is currently in a counseling program, but won't finish until December. So what's your recommendation? Like,
I would do the AEL extension. That gives you one additional year.
So I don't think currently she's on an AEL. So
then she should apply for one.
So apply for an AEL.
Yeah. And then once she gets recommended, it'll switch. She'll get the professional.
Okay. Okay, perfect. And does it matter and I don't know if this matters, but could we hire as an intern or do we just hire as just a regular hire?
I would hire her as a regular hire because then she would qualify for that sweet ESA money.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. I'll pass that on to our HR director. Thank you.
I think we've got all the questions answered in the chat. Unless I missed one. I'm going back to make sure I didn't miss anything.
I do have a question.
Yes.
It, what's the process for closing out an application if someone moves away and they're going to be ending their process? Do you need to know that? Do I just?
Do you mean, oh, you know what? I think we actually missed that slide. Shoot. About records retention.
Yeah, we skipped it.
Yeah, we did.
So let's go back to that slide and that'll
Okay.
answer Lauren's question.
We all survived, by the way, the earthquake drill.
Oh, good.
Yes.
As a former California educator, I take those things very seriously.
Oh, you know what? We didn't miss it. I didn't put it in there.
I thought it was,
Oh,
it's
no,
right there.
it's right there. Okay. Well,
Nope,
sort of.
that's not
Yep.
it.
Yep, I screwed up that one. So the rule that we have approved with our AG is that their educational records retention, which is similar to what universities have for their candidates and their programs, which is basically a 5-year retention rule. So whether they drop from your program or whether they complete your program, you'll need to keep all records for up to 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I will send that out in an email because that's an important thing that we need to share.
And it's 5 years after they separate. So if they leave your program, you need to maintain those records for 5 years after they leave.
What we see a lot of times is they may move out of your LEA or your school. They'll get picked up either in that year or next year at another school. And they're like, you know, well, you were in this APPEL program. What did you do there? And so that's part of that is sharing those records between programs. But then it's also from when we review your program. If they finish the program and you've recommended them, then we'll also review their file that way.
Okay.
Lisa, I do have one more question. So I have a teacher who is going through the WGU master's program, you know, and getting her license that way. So she applied for an associate license, I think last night. Do you know how long that process is taking to get that approval?
Our standard is 4 to 6 weeks, but I'm pretty sure it's taking less than that right now.
Okay.
Andrew, do you know where we are on that?
Yeah, I think the oldest application that we're not waiting for additional evidence, like maybe they didn't submit something correctly. So I think the oldest application is April 6th right now. So about
3 weeks.
If everything's submitted correctly, about 3 weeks. Then.
About 3 weeks.
If we need
Perfect.
additional info or need them to resubmit anything, that can add a little bit of time too. So
Okay, awesome. And who does that go to? Is there a way that I can like follow up on that just to make sure everything was submitted correctly, or do I just wait for?
yeah, you can always email myself or Camilla and we can take a look at that for you to
Okay.
see.
I'll email you the information on the, what do you need? Just a name and?
Yep, just a
number?
Yeah.
Okay, name. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do that, Andrew. Thank you.
Yep.